Rolling, rolling,
Rolling.
rolling.
Instead of action,
rolling,
instead rolling today.
rolling, rolling, rolling. Keep rolling, rolling. What song is that? Rolling, rolling.
Rolling, keep on rolling, rolling. I have no idea. It's the only lyric I can
I think we're singing two different songs.
like, oh, are we?
Yeah.
All right, never mind.
It's okay. It doesn't matter. We still need to.
Good evening.
Good evening, folks. Whenever you're listening to this. Wow. Another week.
Another week.
Another week in the timeless void
Of winter.
I can't wait for it to be warm again at some point. Well, it is 50 degrees today, but still, it's going down to like 20 or something.
Well, I played tennis outside today, and it was so nice.
God bless you.
No, it was like really nice because just a I've lined shirts and pants, and we play, and the sun's on you, so it just feels good to be outside. It's like, yeah, we're all doing a lot of, if anyone's exercising, it's a lot of indoor exercising, although I have seen those not crazy, I've seen those very bold people.
Good save.
Save therapist mouth. Bold people running outside in shorts when it was 24 degrees. That was a little, good for them. So anyway, long story short, most people are inside, but
Right.
What I can understand about those individuals that are continuing to run and do whatever outside is that it feels really good to just the fresh air if you're dressed appropriately.
Oh, sure. I don't know if I've ever seen anybody play tennis in long pants. Is that possible?
Yes. What I have is, well, they have ones that are like the pants and then the skirts over top. They just have a long pant underneath rather than little shorts. But what I've been doing is they're just leggings that I have lined and not lined, and they have the pockets on the side. Like people put their phone, if they're not playing tennis and they're wearing them, you put your phone in there or your wallet.
Okay.
And that way you can have somewhere to put the tennis balls, because you need to have pockets when you're playing tennis for the sake of the
Pockets for the balls.
Yeah, because otherwise it's very annoying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the reason I would be uncomfortable playing tennis is because I always just see people in shorts and t-shirts playing, and I'm like, no, thank you. Especially when it's like 20 degrees outside.
No, there's pants involved in the wintertime.
Okay, I'm just making sure. I'm not familiar with any sports, to be honest, but tennis especially.
I think you just have to get the layering down to the right. Like I feel like I'm pretty good, and I kind of know, and I wear several layers, and then I just peel them off. Or like sometimes I'll be like hot, I'll take my coat, my fleece off, and then later maybe I'm not moving as much, I get chilly, I put it back on. Just have multiple layers on.
Okay.
I don't know. I think I've mastered it.
It just seems like a warm weather sport to me.
It is, except for diehards like me and the people I was playing with today.
Have you ever played when it's like snowing outside?
No, but I played on last weekend and it was 25 degrees. And that was a little much. I was just like those bold runners.
No, thank you.
That was a little much.
I am okay with that. Yeah, no, I just started walking again. I would walk every morning with Dan. We would do like a 45-minute walk because we're adorable.
Really are.
The
story you told me earlier.
We are
very
really adorable. But we stopped because it got too cold outside. But now I started again because it's like you miss it. Like your brain misses it, your body misses it. It's a healthy habit that doesn't cost anything.
Nope.
And pays you back in a multitude of ways. So if you can get outside, get some fresh air, tool around the city wherever you're at.
Some people that are listening are in warm weather, so none of what we're talking about is relevant.
Jealous. That's as soon as I have enough money saved up, I'm buying a house somewhere warm. So when it gets cold, we're traveling down to our other house.
Yeah, I want to be a snowbird. Like I can be here in the summer, and when it gets cold, get out of here. Go somewhere warm and then come back.
Oh God, that would be great.
Yes, give me my wings.
Getting your snowbird wings. They're like the wings that a pilot gives you if you visit the cockpit.
Yeah,
which never happens anymore. I just dated myself because that hasn't happened in like 80 years.
Do they still wear those pins?
I don't know.
I don't recall seeing
I'm not friends with
I haven't been on a plane in a while. So.
I need to make friends with a pilot. Am I friends with a pilot? I don't know if I know any pilots.
I am not.
Huh.
I had a client, I think, whose husband was a pilot. That's as far as I got.
It seems like you'd think it was like a very glamorous thing, like I'm flying a jet all over the world, but really it's not. It's like
it's hard work.
It's
There's
hard
a lot
work.
of hours in hotel rooms and rolling suitcases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oof. How did we get on that?
I don't know. If we just free talked for like an hour, who knows where we would end.
Free-form podcast.
Like if we really had no topic or question.
We do have a topic, I promise.
We promise. We never come without one.
We never come unprepared.
Right.
Yeah, this is going to be our last guestless episode in a while because we have 2 guests coming up.
Yeah, I haven't confirmed 3-2, but March 2nd yet. But I don't know.
I'm glad you clarified.
I do not know why I said 3-2, but
9-7-5.
But we do. I know definitely next week.
Okay, good. Yeah, we have a lot of good stuff lined up.
Yes.
So, but I do enjoy when it's just us talking about
too.
stuff because I feel like we can dig in a little bit more things. Speaking of digging into things, topic for today, question for today, since everything is happening. Well, I'm dating this episode, but it's fixed in time now. Everything that's happening with Spotify and Joe Rogan and, people wanting him canceled and artists pulling their music off of the platform. We are on Spotify as well, but we're still there.
Yes.
We have a 0.0001% of the audience, so we're going to claim.
Woo! We're killing it.
We're killing it.
Killing it.
But it's an interesting. I mean, cancel culture's been around for a while now.
Yeah.
Which I think is also a misnomer. I don't agree with the term cancel culture. I think it's a little bit too general and derivative and final. So I was thinking today, and we talked about it before we started recording, and it's an interesting topic of why cancel somebody in the first place? What purpose does that serve? And if somebody is canceled, can they come back from the canceling? Is this like a one-way ticket out of town, or is there a way to get back into the good graces of the public? And is there any need to? And, why cancel at all? I know there's a ton of questions in there, but...
And it's, I think there's no one answer.
There's no one answer.
No. I was just trying to think of somebody that had been canceled that came back.
I can't think of anybody.
I was thinking about Roseanne Barr back before the recent cancel.
She came back and then she was right out the door.
Yeah, I feel like she, back in the day, earlier days, maybe it wasn't on Roseanne per se, but I feel like something really big happened, and I'm not remembering what it is.
She sang the national anthem.
Oh, that was... Yeah, that was...
Sang is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence, the word sang.
Okay, so that was... Because it was like a mockery, or people felt it was a mockery.
Yeah.
So she may be an example.
She came back a couple times.
She got a couple chances.
She got a couple bites at the apple.
Back, and now I don't know about that anymore. But
I think it's a good place to start at the beginning with, like, why cancel somebody in the first place? Like, where does that start? Like, and I get it if you're, and it doesn't even have to be somebody famous. I think just in general, if you say or do something completely ridiculous and, beyond the pale of what's expected of somebody in polite society, I think you do need a timeout,
Yes.
Why don't I just call it timeouts? Giving somebody a time. I like that better than canceled.
Yeah, I don't know. There's so many layers to this. I have so many things percolating in my head and going, things firing.
Just jump in.
I don't even know where to. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, a lot of people don't believe in it at all. They believe in freedom of speech or freedom, whatever. I guess it falls under that. And then there's obviously the whole other side, or the pendulum swings the other way, or people are like, oh no, if you're going to offend an entire group of people or do something, then you should be shut down.
Right.
So what warrants, and does anything warrant, I'm asking a question now.
Yeah, right?
I can't think of it outside of the context of somebody famous for some reason, so maybe you need to help me with that.
Well, I mean...
Or that's where my brain's at.
I mean, you can find examples of it on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, wherever. Like, when somebody has a following and people are listening to what they say, you know, people have said things that are ridiculous, and then there's a whole other group of people that says you're canceled, you get out, you know. And I see it... First of all, the First Amendment thing, I always want to make sure that people are aware. The First Amendment in the United States, the First Amendment of the Constitution, protects the citizens from Congress making any laws that curtail a citizen's freedom of speech. So the government, writ large, the government cannot tell the citizens what they can and cannot say.
Okay.
That's the First Amendment. Anybody else can say, shut up, you're dumb. Like, that's a right we all have. Yes, I have the right to say whatever I want into a megaphone, but every other citizen has the right to say, shut up and throw tomatoes at me.
Yeah.
Because that's the way the United States works. So, you know, hiding behind the First Amendment a lot of times I think is bogus, because it protects you from the government, not from other people, not from private companies. And all the platforms, all the social media platforms are private companies. Yes, they are a public platform where people can post what they want, but, you know, somebody saying, oh, you can't take me off this platform, you're stepping on my freedom of speech. No, you're not. They're not. It's their company. They can kick off whoever they want for any reason.
Well, I don't know if I'm going in the right direction we want to go, but unfortunately, though, I feel like so much of that is political and money.
Oh, sure. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
And it's not even about right and wrong, people's view of right and wrong, let's put it that way. And what you're allowed to say, you're not allowed to say. It's about, how is this going to reflect on my company?
Well, and also the money part that you said, you know, Facebook runs ads and keeps groups up that are super offensive and gross and terrible because they make money. Right.
Like, if you look at the example of the different sports teams right now, and the fact that there's been discussions over the years about the name of the former name of the Washington Redskins, the Cleveland Indians, et cetera, et cetera. And I've had, personally, I'm just going to share, I've had a problem with all of that for years. It's to me been offensive and wrong. That's just my opinion. But all of a sudden, when do we end up changing these things? When what's going on in this country and the what was the rewording? The unrest, the protesting, all of that's at the height. Mm-hmm. Now all of a sudden, oh, this is a problem, and we need to change this.
Right.
That infuriated me.
Yeah.
Not because I didn't believe it, because I just said I've been believing that it needed to be addressed, but because of the reasons behind it.
Right.
It was like, oh, we're going to lose money.
Right. They weren't doing it because it was the right thing to do. They were doing it because they were going to lose a couple bucks. So, yeah. Freedom of speech, protection from government, not from other people. So that's that. But then number two, when people get canceled, I like to look at it in turn, like the totality of the person and their kind of the breadth of their work, you know, like taking Joe Rogan, for example. He's had a podcast for a while now. He has a ton of shows out there. He's like the biggest moneymaker that Spotify has. Right. He got called out for spreading misinformation about COVID. Mm-hmm. Rightly so. I think if you have a voice that the public is listening to, you have a responsibility to give them correct information, you know? Or, I mean, and I was going to say, if not, at least couch it as like, this is my opinion. And, you know, whether you do or not, it's still, if you have that platform, I think it behooves you. Like, I wouldn't say anything on this show that I wasn't sure of that would affect people's lives, you know? And I take that responsibility seriously, and I'm sure you do too.
Absolutely.
Right?
I tried to.
I try to, at every juncture. But then I try to look at the whole, you know, breadth of the person's work and like, is this a one-off thing? Is it like something that, you know, you were talking about this before the show started, of like, was it one-off? Were they young? Did they not know better?
Yeah.
Like, can you say that again? Because you said it really well.
Yeah, it's and I said to Ralph before when we were talking, I was like, it's very confusing, and I think I'm a little bit torn at times because I mean, whether I think it's right or wrong is one thing, but I do think that I hate to say this, but what it is that took place, what was said or done, and or the person's age at which this took place, like when somebody's in the spotlight for whatever reason, and someone goes back 25 years when they were 16 and pulls something out, and it's nothing about how they've represented themselves for the past 20-something years. I have a hard time. At that point, I'm like, they were a kid, and they've grown, and they're not that person. Just like I like to think I've grown, and I'm very different in many, many ways. And so that's different to me. This is what I was saying to Ralph, and I tread very lightly with what I'm about to say. I'm, I don't know, 45, and something is very blatantly discriminatory or offensive, and you're developed. You are a grown person at that point, and it's very clear. Like there's no misinterpretation of what's been said or done. Then I feel differently about it as far as the way it should be treated, and I don't know if I'm right with that. That's why I'm sort of talking a little slow and like in a sing-song voice. Because like I'm still processing this because we just started talking about it before we came on. If I'm on point with that or not. I'm still grappling a little bit.
No, I think so. I think that's definitely a factor. If somebody's cake isn't fully baked, if they're 18 years old, and they're saying things and they just don't know any better. They honestly just don't know because they haven't been exposed. Like I think this connects to our last episode about banning books. If they just don't know any better and haven't been exposed to different points of view, and they say something and somebody's like, whoa, you gotta think twice about that, buddy. And then they're like, oh wow, you're right, sorry. And then they open up a dialogue and they learn, and it's like a learning experience. Great. Like I think that's the way it should happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to share the specifics of something with me, but I will generally say that I had several situations, but I had something very specific where I made a comment very, very young, and I had no idea that what I was saying was offensive. And someone who became one of my dearest, closest friends, who I am watching her pup right now, and still very good friends with, could have run screaming from me and could have said, this girl, wow, and never spoken to me again. And she was, I'm very grateful, didn't do that and actually spoke to me about what I just said and why that was offensive and super wrong. And I still feel silly about it this many years later, but I'm so grateful because that I learned, and that would never fly out of my mouth ever again since. And I learned why, but if I'm doing that at my age now, there's might be a little bit different lens that people might have towards me.
Yeah. And I mean, as a performer, I'm sure I can think of at least one time in my mind where I said something that I didn't realize was offensive, and then somebody talked to me after the show about it, and I was like, oh, thank you. I will never, ever say that again. And it's, sometimes you just don't know. It's not like the big ones. Like there's the big words that we all know, the big phrases that are like, please don't, never, ever, ever say that. But then there's the other things that you might have heard one-off somebody else say or like read or somewhere, and you didn't think in context. It's like, those are the kind of things I think we're talking about now. Of like, you just didn't know, you didn't have the worldly experience to, but it's good that there were people around us that said, hey, that is not good. And
and I think we're always growing this way. I feel like in the past maybe few years, I'll say, maybe even more so recently, I've learned a lot more about, I'm going to forget the word. I'm going to totally forget. The privilege that I have as a not disabled person. I'm forgetting the word, able, I don't know what the word is, but, and all the privilege and all the things that I have because I don't have a disability. Like, that's something I've learned a lot more about in recent years. And it's not like to my knowledge, I was going around saying terrible things before that, although I'm sure I said some things that would be very offensive to somebody with a disability. But I'm learning more and more and becoming more and more aware. And that's, again, I'm going back to other podcast episodes, that's having more contact with people who have a disability and you can talk to and learn from, which is exactly how I've become a little bit more educated. I've got a long way to go. But.
And this ties into something I posted today about cultivating your student self and being, trying to move into a growth mindset of approaching every experience and opportunity and new person as, I want to learn from this. I'm curious about this. I'm not going to be the expert. And I think a lot of times when we get called out on something, our ego steps in to protect us, and we get angry and defensive because we know we don't like being called out for stuff. And it's hard to set that aside and say, you know what, you're right. I'm going to hear you out. I want to learn from this. And yeah, it's a mindset that it takes work to cultivate. It takes practice, but I think in the end, it's important to have that frame of mind when you go into situations like this.
I think the other side to this that we cannot go here, but I'll go here for a minute, is people who have I can't think of the right wording, Ralph. This has been all day.
All day with this.
People who feel as though they keep getting put in a position to educate other people for their own ignorance. Sure. I can't think of the right wording.
Yeah.
That can also become exhausting. There's this, I want to learn and I want to better understand, and I want to better understand privilege and race and religion and all this stuff. And then the wish, or in some cases the pressure that's put on that person or persons that represents that group to then educate those people that don't know or understand or I think that there's a fatigue around that, there's a frustration around that, and there's a resistance after a while of like, I'm done. I'm from X group, I'm Jewish, I'm African American, I'm LGBTQ, that I'm done. I've done my time, and I am not going to be responsible for teaching any more non-LGBTQ.
We got to shorten that.
Non-African.
I'll talk to the rest of the group and see.
Or non-Jewish people about what they're saying, doing, or thinking. Like, it's not my job. Like, I'm tired.
But point well taken. Absolutely, I agree 1,000%, because it's not my job to educate people on LGBTQ issues and why you shouldn't say certain things or think certain things. I think if the opportunity's there and somebody's nice enough to call you out and say, hey, that's, rethink what you're saying because XYZ, I think that's nice of them. But I think to clarify, I think what I'm saying is if somebody calls you out, I don't think it's on them to say, and here's why. I think just somebody saying, hey, you shouldn't say that's bad.
Right.
And then me doing my own research and saying, crap, I wonder what happened. And then doing my own reading to figure it out, I think is the best. Right.
Like, it's not person of XYZ group's responsibility to now mentor you and give you the education. Like that, I'm exhausted and I'm not even in any of these categories. Right. I'm the most wasp human ever here. But that's something that was brought to my attention that I found very interesting and made a lot of sense. It's like, okay, sure, there's some people that might want to do that, and that's fine. Sure. But it shouldn't fall on people in that group to then have to continually teach others what's okay and what's not okay.
Yeah, and I think there may be a tendril of that in canceling somebody, you know, like, hey, you've done this really egregious thing. It's not up to us to educate you.
Punish you.
It's to punish you. Go educate yourself and then come back when you're ready, you know. But then I agree with all of that, but then I think that begs the question, what happens after that? Is that person just floating in space forever, or is there a way for them to come back and say, you know what, you're right. I've done reading. I've educated myself. I realize now what happened. I'm going to work to be a better version of myself and not do that. Is that enough?
So hard.
I know, right?
It really is hard.
It's a good question.
There's been certain things that have been done and said that I don't think it's enough. I know it's wrong, but it goes back to age and how blatantly, like, how, you know that what you're saying. Some people will just go off at the mouth and don't give a crap and believe everything you're saying. So that's easy. Cancel all the way. I don't want to hear you anymore.
Right.
To be quite honest.
Right.
But then there's people that, I don't know, there's so many categories. And there's people that really are that way but pretend they're not, and then it slips out, and then, oh my gosh, so should we give them a chance? No, because they've really just been masking who they really are and what they really think.
Right.
And then there's not knowing. There's just so many different aspects of it. And how do you really, I don't know if I'm
pattern of behavior.
True.
Yeah. And I think people who have been canceled exhibit a pattern of behavior. It's not just a one-off thing.
No names being mentioned.
No names are being mentioned. Because we would like to grow this show to be something someday. It's still in its embryonic stage. But I think that's part of it too. We look at the pattern of behavior. Is it like a one-off thing that somebody said just because they didn't realize? Or is it they said something, but if you look back on their work, it's like they've been saying something for a while.
Then I'm not going to mention a name. We're not going to get into specifics because I'm not about to start calling out celebrities. That would be really bad. But then there's some things that have happened that are blatant.
Right.
Racism or blatant discrimination. Like everyone knows. No one doesn't know what it means to say X word or phrase.
Right.
How do you come back from that? I don't know how you come back and say, oh, I didn't know, and I'm all better now because I read some books. Like that's why I kind of go back and forth. I'm like,
yeah.
There's things that there's some real just like your basics of what you just don't.
Right, the basics of being a human being.
And almost every single person knows this.
Yeah, I think there's certain words and phrases that fall out of certain people's mouths very easily. Right. And for those of us who wouldn't dream of saying words or phrases like that and don't, it's harder to accept an apology or like a mea culpa or I'm going to change because, well, are you going to change? Because that was a pretty nasty thing you said, and you've said it multiple times, and it's very easy for you to say, and it's like you're in a different category of thought at that point than the rest of us.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking of one particular word, and it's like you could be outs and abouts, and you could be a song come on.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And maybe by accident, someone slips and sings along to a word they would never say out loud.
Right.
Different to me than somebody that's repeatedly saying the word.
Not in a song context.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying either is great, but it's just, there's so many caveats. It's hard. I'm a little uncomfortable. I mean,
it's a minefield. It is. But I think it's important to talk about because it goes back to personal boundaries, things that we've been talking about forever on this show, how we communicate with each other, what we hope to gain from communication with each other, and what's acceptable and not acceptable, and giving people the agency to push back on things that are not acceptable, and not just staying quiet and saying, oh, that's just that person, that's what they do, that's what they say.
I think it's just hard to know if people are authentic too. Like this whole thing with the whole sports teams was my one little, I guess, example. And like, are people just, especially if we're talking in the public eye, are they just saying stuff? I wanted to curse so bad right there. Saying stuff to say it just to save themselves, or are they? It's so hard to tell. Even outside probably the public eye, I don't know. It's just really hard to tell whether somebody's just giving lip service, I guess,
right,
or they really genuinely didn't know and feel terrible and want to be different and are making the efforts to do so.
And going back to your point about it's not the marginalized community's responsibility to educate. I 1000% agree.
Yeah.
Know from personal experience, I'm tired of it as well. It's up to other people in that person's community to educate them. So, and I ran into this, oh my God, I forget what it was about, but I mentioned something about, I think it was when it might have been George Floyd when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I posted on Facebook something about the officer who shall remain nameless because he doesn't deserve to be mentioned.
No, he doesn't.
And I said something like it was like directed at white men, and I said, we failed if this keeps happening because we're not holding each other accountable for what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I got some very pointed responses from other white men, like saying,
did you get a Facebook fight about it?
I got a little tiny Facebook fight about it, but it wasn't a big dust up like a lot of people have, but it was like, why is this hitting a nerve for you? Like, why are you so offended by me saying we have to call each other out?
They don't want to take responsibility.
Right.
That's the problem right there with privilege.
It's that privilege, it's the ego, it's everything we've been talking about on the show of it's coming like full force when somebody challenges you about your deeply held beliefs about something.
Yep.
And it's not up to the marginalized community to educate you. It's up to the other people that look like you and have the same upbringing as you and who are marginalizing to say, hey, buddy, not cool. You can't do that. And there's not enough. I'm just going to talk for white dudes out there because I am one. There's not enough of us doing that.
No, and that's like, it literally gives me like, not a visceral, might be a little dramatic reaction.
Right here.
That really,
right,
it's like, I'm not doing that, so why are you blaming me? And that is missing the freaking point.
It's missing the point.
Oh my God, drives me. And I have people in my life that I've had these conversations with, and I kind of want to like scream. But it's not about someone saying it's all your fault, you white male.
Right.
It's about collectively.
Well, there's a lot of things you can point at white men and say it is your fault.
No, but I don't. As an individual, okay, you might be a big contributor, but it needs to be a collective thing. And I don't want to make.
Well, no, I think it's a good point that even though I am not personally responsible for a lot of the ills that America, has visited upon marginalized people, I am still benefiting from the structures that are in place that keep marginalized people down. And so it's up to me to speak out about that stuff and try to change it everywhere I can, because even though I'm not directly responsible, I still benefit from it.
Right. And also when you're saying, oh, it's not me, or that wasn't a fair voice, but I did it.
It sounded like somebody.
It's not me, or why are you blaming, or the defensiveness you were
right.
talking about, then you're just part of the problem. Not because you individually are responsible for it, but because that attitude is what's perpetuating it. But I think that, I don't want to generalize here, but I think when you're getting that response from a white male, those individuals do not have exposure to a lot of people, or any people maybe, that are different from them. Because if they did, they wouldn't talk like that. I don't know if I should have said that, but I just did.
No, I agree. And I also think it's a power thing, too, of...
I don't know if it's always... Not to cut you off.
I think it is just because...
You really got in here. We are in
I'm going to get bashed for this, but that's okay. I think a lot of the white men who society in general has problems with, the only thing they have going for them is that they're white men.
Okay.
And it's hard to, when that's your claim to fame, it's hard to detach yourself from that and say, oh wow, there is stuff I can change, there is stuff I can speak out about, there are people I can help with my privilege and my status, because that's all you have going for you.
I don't think they see it.
No, of course not.
You think they see that?
No, that's what I'm saying.
People, again, we're not talking about all white men.
Not all white men.
You might be in big trouble. Podcast canceled.
Fine.
Canceled.
Send me emails, I don't care.
I don't know, my experience has been more of, I don't understand it. So why am I part of the problem? I'm not doing anything to offend X group, Y group, Z group, whatever.
Well, there's a lot of assumptions in that statement too.
True.
Yeah.
True. Good point. I mean, oh gosh, so many things come up.
I know.
I got things I got buttons pushed right now, but yeah.
And I think it's important to talk about it because it's what we're talking about right now. And yes, last week too, about the books. I think it permeates a lot of what we do with our clients, even though it may not be on the surface. It's there. All this stuff we're talking about where you're at in society, how you feel about other groups and other people, and about yourself and your status and the structure and all that. It affects us all, no matter who you are. And I think we don't talk about it enough to say it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to question it. It's okay to disagree about it. At the end of the day, I want to believe everybody's good and we all come from a place of assuming best intentions, even if you say really horrible things. I have to believe there's a glimmer of hope in there somewhere for everybody.
I don't know. I think even with male privilege, white male privilege, I don't think that those men even have. I'm repeating myself, I guess. Have a clue, and don't think that they're. Don't see the privilege.
And they also have to want to change. I think that's the final component of this is, can you be canceled? Sure. Is there a way back? Possibly. But I think a lot of it has to do with the individual and them saying, I'm going to put in the work. I'm going to be introspective, take stock of why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I'm saying what I'm saying, and do better. And I think that's all anybody wants.
I always wonder if for some people they don't know how or where to start.
But then again, it's up to that person.
It is.
To get the resources they need, And if they have people in their lives who are nice enough to educate them, great. And if not, there's a whole internet out there full of books and articles and graphics.
A lot of
buttons to press.
I got buttons pressed today.
Right?
Got things. Yeah.
You press. How are you feeling? It's my turn to check in on you.
I'm okay. I'm actually really glad we talked about this.
It's an interesting topic, and I think canceling somebody is a weapon that we wield, and I think there needs to be some thought behind it. I don't think I've seen a version of canceling somebody that I thought was inappropriate or unjust or too much. I feel like...
Oh, I did. I'm going to tell you in a minute.
Oh, really? Okay.
I don't forget if I told you. Finish your thought.
But I hope... none spring to mind. I'm sure as soon as we stop taping, I'm going to be like, oh, there's 20 things I could have said. But I assume best intentions from everybody, and I hope that, if somebody gets canceled, it's warranted. But it's also up to that person being canceled to do the work on themselves and say, wow, I'm going to take this opportunity to think. But if we're talking about celebrities and there's money involved, there really is no incentive to do the work on yourself because you're making bank. Saying exactly what you're saying.
It's not fair, though, to every celebrity that they're all just about...
Sure.
All right, Ralph. All right, canceled. This is the last episode.
I'm canceling myself. I'm canceling myself.
I'm just kidding. No, my example is random, and I think I might have gone... I went off to you about this.
Oh, sure.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't want to... If you're not comfortable saying it, you don't say it.
No, it was about the Tonya Harding special.
Oh, Tonya Harding, yeah.
So anyway, this is probably off topic, but well, I watched the I, Tonya 5 years after it came out or whatever it was, about Tonya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan and the ice skating thing, whatever. And I was deeply saddened by learning what I learned about her life. It was awful.
Yeah.
Really, really awful. Tonya Harding I'm talking about. And, jury's still sort of out about exactly what happened with that whole thing and who was behind it and if she knew and if she didn't know. But damn, when I watched that and I learned things that were factual as far as her upbringing, the abuse, her lack of education, and then I watched the scene where they cancel her, where the judge says to her, I don't think she went to jail, but there's you can never skate again. And it gives me a chill now. It was so sad to me because I watched the whole thing and I was really invested, clearly. But it was oh my God, really? Does that have to be for the rest of her life? She had nothing else. And that, to me, when I looked at her whole life and everything that happened, was that's a little much.
Yeah.
I think she could be helped and go back on the rink.
Yeah.
I don't know how I brought this particular movie really bothered me, clearly, because I'm still talking about it. It's 2 weeks later.
Well, sure. It must have been a good movie.
I thought it was good. It was just so sad, and I had no idea how bad it was.
Well, that also speaks to the point of redemption, and if people are worthy of it, I don't know if worthy is the right word, but I think there's always an avenue back, but it's up to the person. Oh, that's what popped into my head while we were talking about it. Watching, I've seen documentaries about white supremacists who leave that culture and become educators and advocates for equity, and that's a prime example of somebody who was in the life doing terrible things, but then realized, oh wow,
that's true. That's a great example.
I can change. There is a choice, and I think everybody has a choice, no matter who you are, what you do, how much money's involved. There's always a choice to say, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. I think, and no judgment. I mean, if you made the choice that you're going to keep saying what you're saying and doing what you're doing, even though people are saying it's wrong, and you got canceled, that's your choice.
Yep.
Then
that's what you're doing.
That's what you're doing. But I think it all comes down to choice. Always, we always have a choice in what path to take moving forward. So.
Oh, wow, that was so eloquently just summed up.
Thank you.
I felt like you just
and
breathe.
Everybody eats some grape nuts now. It's great. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's it.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
I think we covered it. As we say every single time. If you have a thought, response, positive or negative, we want to hear it at heyletmeaskyousomething@gmail.com.
Yep. All of our contact information is always in the show notes. Yeah.
Till next time?
Till next week. We have special guests next week. It's going to be fun. And then a lot more guests after that. We're halfway through our season.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It goes so quickly.
When is it over?
It's never over.
I know, but I'm vacationing in March at some point.
Oh.
I didn't know if I'm vacationing from the show.
Way to spring it on me. Well, you're gonna be zooming in.
I will pull myself off the beach to Zoom
from Puerto Vallarta, wherever you're going. I don't know. I don't even know if that's still a thing.
I know. I've heard of it. I'm not going there. I've never been.
All right, folks. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye. I felt great about that, Ralph.
Yeah,
talk.
that was a
Tough talk.
That was a tough talk, and let me save this before I forget, because you know what? Screw it. It's
I'm rubbing the baby dog the whole time down here.
There's a dog under
There
there.
is a little bunny down there. A little bunny baby dog who's enjoying my foot rubs.
Our last episode about the book banning, not as popular as other episodes. And I'm wondering if this one will follow suit, and I wonder if we're getting too political.
Oh.
I don't know. I think it's stuff that
we can pull back.
We're human beings, and I think it's stuff that it's all stuff that affects what we do. I think it's all connected to what we advocate. So I don't think we're getting completely off base of like, unicorns are real, here's my pictures, you know, or like alien abductions.
Sasquatch.
He's okay.
Our entire system was just going
Pull
to
the
be
whole
pulled
system
down.
with the dog. No, but I think it's necessary, and I think we wouldn't be true to ourselves if we didn't talk about this stuff.
Well, what's made us so wonderful thus far is that we talk about what's important to us, what's important to the people writing in. Like what's in front of us. That's what we talk about. What's on our brains, on someone else's brain, and that's just what we do. And so, if it's not that popular at that time, well then, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like this might get more bite from people. I'm not sure.
So, well, if you're listening out there in YouTubeville, subscribe to our podcast and listen to that one. Don't just watch us. We like that you watch us, but listen to us too. And tell your friends. At the same time, put both on. I don't care how it affects your brain.
Nope.
Or your balance. Just make it happen.
Just sit while you're doing it.
Make it happen. Make it so. All right, yeah. Bye, everybody. See you next time.